first known rules of golf were drawn up in 1744 by the Gentlemen Golfers of Edinburgh in Leith, Scotland. Since then, the game has changed dramatically. Golf courses, equipment, and not least the rules. So where do I go when I want to learn about the rules of the game today? Well, I go to the Golf Rules Questions podcast with Blakey and Roscoe, of course. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of the Golf Rules Questions podcast. Well, hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of the Golf Rules Questions podcast. I'm Roscoe, your co-host, and sitting opposite me, virtually of course, is Blakey, back for episode 2. Blakey, welcome back to the Golf Rules Questions podcast. How are you, sir?
Going very good. Had a great weekend watching the golf. First major of the year. Very interesting. I'm sure you're going to talk more about that on My Love of Golf podcast, but certainly for me as a rules guru or interested in the rules at least, there were a lot of really interesting situations that we are going to talk about today.
Absolutely, mate. We'll get into that in a second, but just reflecting, now that you're an official, welcome to the podcast world, you are an official podcaster. How's your first week of being a golf podcaster felt, mate? You've had some feedback. There's been a little bit of dialogue coming across the interwebs on episode 1 to you.
Yeah, no, it's been fantastic. I've had a few comments through YouTube, Facebook, and of course my main medium, Instagram. People are looking forward to listening to more of us chat about the rules of golf and our experiences and examples of the rules of golf. I've probably signed about 3 or 4 autographs as I've been walking down the street. I don't know how they recognise me with a mask on, but I guess they put the eyes to the name and go from there.
Mate, my question is, has anyone asked about old Tom Morris?
No one has asked about old Tom Morris or the the great rules, first rules signed at the
Leith Links by the what became known as the Honourable Company of Edinburgh Golfers. Well, I do have connections to Leith, Edinburgh, because that is where my parents are from. So, I may have been able to get someone there that was able to give us a bit of an introduction for the podcast. But I certainly had a few people going, how did you get the where's the old Tom Morris impersonation come from? We'll just leave that there. We won't give away too many secrets. But anyway, I did get a bit of feedback on the intro, which was it sounds fun. So if you haven't listened to it, go and listen to the intro. Well, you will if you listen to the podcast. Of course, naturally, you've got this far. So Blakey, as you say, it's been a big weekend in golf. The first major. We're in August. We've missed the Open. We've missed the Masters. The Masters will come later in the year. The Open won't come. The US Open will come. We had to wait a long time, and my sense among the golfing community was that it was worth the wait. They were very keen to see some major action, and it delivered. It absolutely delivered on many fronts. It delivered on a scoring front. It delivered on a future star of the game, or not a future star, a star of the game, but one of the young guns of the game taking and raising the Wanamaker. But when you think about that last round and you get to maybe 4 or 5 holes to go and there's so many people stacked at the leaderboard, it was sensational to watch that, and it was captivating. But there were many other things that captivated us from a Golf Rules Questions perspective during the tournament, and a number of rules imbroglios. I don't know if that's the right word, if there is such a word, but how would you frame up the rules imbroglios that happened over the tournament?
Yeah, I usually refer to them as scenarios or situations. Very interesting, actually. We had a couple of broken clubs, and we had, a couple of players upholding the rules in the best way possible. We also had some terrible shots. The ones that we saw on TV were mostly good, but we had a couple of shots more akin to my golfing vocabulary. It was really interesting, and we had a fair bit of traction and traffic from people wanting to know what the rules are. So, we're going to start probably with the broken clubs, because that's one of the more interesting scenarios.
Well, let's just have a listen to one of those scenarios if I can get the interwebs to work. So we'll talk about. Should we talk about Shane Lowry first? That episode.
Yeah.
Yep. Let's talk about.
That's a good one to start because that is just under the rules of golf.
Let's have a listen to that.
That was the second shot of Shane Lowry, and that club will not have a second chance. The frustrations continue here, obviously, for Shane.
Well, you can't see the vision, but he just grabs the, whatever it was, a 7-iron, just bangs it over the knee, snaps it in two, walks off. You can hear it. You can hear the little ching of the KBS Tour shaft just snapping over the knee. Wasn't the greatest weekends for the current Open champ. So he's just gone wacko, snapped it. What happens then? Yeah,
well, I mean, the fact that he made the weekend was pretty good, so he should be encouraged by that.
Okay.
But he hit a less than ordinary shot, and certainly less than ordinary in his mind. Under 4.1A, if you break a club, you can actually continue to use it even though it's now non-conforming. So he's snapped the shaft in two, so it's now non-conforming, and you can continue to use it for the rest of the round, or you can try and repair it. But in repairing it, you must use the same grip, the same shaft, and the same club head. So it might be a little bit hard to try and repair that club. You aren't permitted under that rule to replace the club, and this is under 4.1B as well. You aren't permitted to replace the club unless it was damaged by someone else, an outside influence. This one, it wasn't. Shane clearly snapped it over his leg, so he's not allowed to replace that club. He can continue to use it. Not sure that there would ever be a situation where he would, but yeah, basically that 7-iron has to set it on the bench for the rest of the round.
So let's just say that he whacked the club into a tree root in anger, of his frustration, instead of snapping it over his knee, and he bends the 7-iron at the hosel, not breaks it, but bends it, changes the loft. He's allowed to continue to use that club?
Yes, from January 1, 2019, if you slightly bend it, he can try and bend it back, or he can just continue to use it with that bend. Even if that was in anger, that would be permissible under that rule.
Because that is, as you say, in January 1, 2019, that's one of the rules that changed. So before, what would have been the situation prior to that? And I think this is one of the rules that sometimes people may not have picked up on in the rules change. So before that, what would have been the situation?
So before that, it was all about normal course of play and not in the normal course of play. So in Shane's situation, it wouldn't be considered in the normal course of play. So he wouldn't be allowed to continue to use it for the rest of the round or have it repaired. He'd just have to let that club sit that one out, and he certainly wouldn't be permitted to replace it. So that one would be done.
Okay. Well, he never got to use it because it was snapped in two. Now we had another one that happened, and that was probably the one that got a little bit more airtime, and that was the big boy, big Bryson DeChambeau, snapping the driver. Let's see if we can hear that. It's in slow-mo.
There's a lot of power and speed there. There's just not 1 ounce of energy left in the bag.
Well,
and the head drops off.
must have been a little.
It's let's see if we can get some better vision of that. But basically, Bryson DeChambeau launches one of the big bombs and follows through, and then next thing he turns down and his head of his driver's on the ground. So what's happening there?
Yeah, well, I should say that both of these vision of both of these incidents are on my YouTube, so you can go and check out Shane snapping his club and Bryson snapping his driver.
You think I would have pulled up your YouTube site and not someone else. Sorry,
no, well,
sorry, boss.
I've taken off the sound for the Shane one, so no, you were right in grabbing someone else's, and I think the Bryson one, I couldn't find sound on that one, so no dramas at all there, Ross. But if you do, listeners, if you do have access to the internet and a mobile phone to go and view, you're more than welcome to go to Golf Rules Questions and view it.
Congratulations on the over 1,000 subscribers now too. We put the call out last week. If anyone can, give Blakey and Golf Rules Questions YouTube side a bum up with some subscriptions, that you certainly rose to the challenge there. And thanks for getting him over 1,000. It's good.
Yeah, absolutely, Ross. Got over the 1,000 just after the podcast got released. So fantastic work there by yourself. And as you know, it's just a resource for everyone to go and use. There's playlists there, so all the a lot of the videos are grouped by rule number. You might not know the rule number, but once you start watching the videos, you'll be able to put two and two together as to what the situation is for the rule number.
So back to Bryson.
Back to Bryson. Shouldn't get too distracted, but back to Bryson now. Let's just start with 2 years ago what this would have been deemed at, because it's a good way to broach into it. So it's funny, there's some funny things that athletes do in golf. Simply bending down. Other sports might not see them as athletic things, but that's part of the game of golf. But Bryson's gone down to grab his tee from the ground, and in doing so, he's leant on his driver. Now, he did say in the press conference afterwards that his driver was probably about to snap anyway. So the fact that it sort of happened then and not during a stroke was actually quite fortunate for him. So he's leant down on the club to get a tee, and 2 years ago that would be considered in the normal course of play. Now that might sound strange, but it's not just the swing. It's putting the club back into the bag lightly. It's obviously leaning on it with no intention to snap it, and that's exactly what it's done. And then it's just slightly snapped off. And now, so 2 years ago, that would have been fine. He would have been able to replace it. Now, since 1 January 2019, which we talked about with Shane, that actually would have meant that Bryson couldn't replace his driver for the rest of the round. And I think in this instance, it happened on the 7th hole, and he teed off on the 1st, so he still had 11 holes to go. So under that rule, he wouldn't have actually been able to replace it. He would have been able to try and play with it. No chance, just playing with a head or and you can't use a shaft by itself. And try and repair it. He could have tried to repair it. Probably a little bit easier for him, since they had tour trucks, so they might have been able to get it to him by hole 8 or 9 or 10. But even easier, because and this local rule came out last year, where a committee can adopt this local rule, G9, in committee procedures section 8, that it basically is the same as the rule of 2 years ago. So if your club is damaged in the normal course of play, which we talked about, that was the normal course of play, then because that local rule has been adopted, the player can replace their club, which with the tour trucks, easy. Whereas how many drivers have you got, Ross, sitting in your car waiting for you to walk through 9 and grab from the boot of your car?
Well, you're probably asking the wrong guy that question, because for me doing what I do, I've usually got a couple of drivers kicking a bat, and I can probably lean to my right here and put my hand on maybe 3 at the moment. But no, that's a luxury of doing what I do. Now, but you're right, no one else can really, not many people have that option to do that. Now, what about the time when, now I'm racking my aging memory banks as we speak, there was a situation where someone broke their driver, it was in a big tournament, and they sent the driver off with an official or a member of their team, took it off to the tour truck, replaced the shaft, and then brought it back. And that was a breach. It was repaired off-site. Look,
that would be permitted. I think the one that you are talking about, if my memory serves me correctly, might have been last year, and I'm not sure the player. I'd love the listeners to tell me if I'm right or wrong here, but it may have been Varner III.
Yes, I think you're right.
And it was a strange situation because there's an interpretation in the book about not being able to use a club that you've been carrying as parts. Okay, so let me try not to confuse people. What had happened is he had the driver head in his bag, a spare driver head in his bag and a spare shaft in his bag. And so if you break your club and have the ability to replace a club, that doesn't mean that you can actually use the parts or the components of a club that you had already been carrying.
Right.
So,
there you go.
So what he was supposed to do was actually use the parts from somewhere else, a tour truck that no one had been carrying on the course, basically, instead of using the ones that were in his bag.
Gotcha. Yeah. So that was therefore he breached what was the rule that he broke there?
Well, it would have been under that 4.1 and because basically if you're carrying the parts, what they're saying is that you basically have 15 clubs.
Yeah.
So you're breaching that rule, which means you incur the general penalty.
So Shane broke his iron, no good, can't repair that, so he can't use it anymore. Bryson.
Correct.
So what happened with Bryson? Do you know if he sent out to the Cobra Kai dojo and got a new driver sent back?
So yeah, so Shane broke his iron, but he could use it, but he couldn't have it replaced. But he had to use it as it was. So that's the adoption from 1 January 2019. Bryson most likely, who's he swing with? Cobra, does he?
Yeah.
Most likely Cobra had a spare driver that they were able to bring out to him, within a hole or so. And, it wouldn't have been hard to get through the crowds. So would have been pretty easy to get there.
And Varner from years gone by, well, he was carrying a 15th club in effect, so that's why he couldn't just rip out the same shaft from a driver that he had in bits sitting in his bag.
Yeah.
Is he allowed to carry the club in bits in his bag? Was he breaching the rule for just carrying the club, or he can carry it in bits and not use it? Do you have to declare that? That's always that questionable thing. You see that in club golf a little bit. Oh, guys, I'm carrying a 4th wedge today. It's my old 60. I was using it at the range on the weekend. I'm not using it. So that's okay, isn't it?
I'm actually really glad you brought that question up. So you can carry components in your bag. It's not considered a club.
Until you put it into play. Right.
But the breach is if you then are able to replace a club, you're not able to put those components together to make a club. Okay. So that would be no. But if Johnny is, he's putting, he's practicing on the putting green. He's got 20 minutes to his tee time. He finds out, or he knows that he has more than 14 clubs in his bag. He has to get rid of that club. He can't carry it with him when he starts his round, because that would be 15 clubs, more than 14 clubs. If he has his 14 clubs and somehow, this is on a Saturday, and on the Friday night he was mucking around on the golf course, took his 5-year-old out for a bit of a hit with their plastic clubs, put the plastic club in the bag, forgot about it, gets to the first tee the next day in a bit of a rush, checks his bag for 14 clubs, sees that little Tommy's plastic club is in there. He would have to declare it, and would be allowed to declare it as out of play and not be penalised because he's doing it shortly before he tees off.
So irrespective if that's a plastic club or a golf club, is that what you're saying? So you can declare your club out of play?
Well, you can declare any club out of play, and if it's a non-conforming club, it's even more important that you declare it out of play. But
right,
you can declare any club out of play shortly before you tee off. So you couldn't do it, 20 minutes before and then say, I'm just going to carry it round with me. You'd still be in breach of more than 14 clubs there. But if you get to the tee and you're like, I can't run back to put it in my car or run back to put it in my locker, I don't have time.
Yeah.
You can declare it out of play. Best idea is to turn it upside down and just and start the round basically.
So if you're someone who leaves their club making decisions till the last moment, vis-a-vis maybe me, if I'm going to use a 58 degree or a 60 degree as an example, you can't go to the range, warm up, take both those clubs, high bounce, low bounce, hard bounce, low bounce, eeny, meeny, miny, mo, put them both back in, then get to the tee and go, oh, boys, I'm not using the low bounce today. You can't do that. You've just got to, cool.
No, it's basically if you've forgotten.
Yep.
If you've forgotten that your club is in there, that extra club is in there,
just my dogs, mate. They get excited about golf rules as well.
Some outside influences there.
Yeah.
If you've forgotten that your club is in there, then you can do it shortly before you tee off. But you can't be taking 20 clubs to the first tee and then saying, 6 of these are not in play. Because it's so windy, I'm going to go with low flight on my irons or something like that. I'm not so much up on the end equipment type stuff.
Probably the saddest time of my golfing junior career was in my early junior days. I had my first ever proper golf bag. It was a nylon golf bag, Blakey. We bought it at a golf shop in Sydney, which is down near Central Station. Used to have a big neon sign. Some of the listeners from New South Wales might remember it. Sharpies, I think it was called. My dad and mum took me down to Sydney. It was a big journey out from the Hunter Valley. We bought a golf club, golf bag, a 5-wood, and a sand wedge. But in between those clubs, I had all my little cut down Aussie Pickworths, and one of the 9-irons had slipped. Oh, I wasn't using it, but it had slipped down to the bottom of the bag because it was a cut down club, so it was shorter than the bag, and it was in the bottom of the bag in effect. I couldn't see it. I didn't know that it was there. I wasn't using it. I didn't know it was there, and my playing partner went through my bag and found it, and identified that I had more than 14 clubs, and I was there was it's obviously a long time ago, but there was a fracas around the decision because I was actually in tension for this little junior tournament to win, a dozen hot dots. About the penalty, it was like a per shot, how many shots per hole. So immediate decision was like, oh, you're disqualified. But then it was like, I think the old ruling was it's a maximum 2-shot penalty, but there's a maximum per holes that could be applied by.
Yeah, that's right. So the ruling 2 years ago was 2-shot penalty per hole in stroke play, and then a maximum of four strokes. In match play, it's loss a hole, maximum of 2 holes lost. But that's different. It's called a match adjustment penalty in match play, but it's different now. So basically, there's no limitation in stroke play. No, there still is a limitation in stroke play.
So, listeners, you can't. Blakey's feverishly going for the manual. You got the big golf rules book there, or the small golf rules book? You got the big one. There it is. No, I haven't caught you. No, surely not.
Yeah, you've caught me.
Okay.
I mean, I wouldn't think that I'm going to go on here without making a mistake here or there, but I will always try and make sure the book is close to me in case I'm unsure or something. So the maximum still available, or maximum is still there, which means it's a 4-stroke penalty in stroke play.
Yeah.
And 2 loss a hole in 2 loss of holes, lost 2 holes in match play, and but it's when you find out. So if you find out on the 16th, then you might have had access to 15 clubs for 16 holes. But if you find out on the 3rd, then you've had access to 15 clubs for 3 holes. So, but yeah, that's I've never heard of a playing partner going through someone else's bag to check how many clubs they've got.
It was a kid from school. He was a bit of an arch nemesis of mine on a number of fronts, not just a golfing front. Let's just say we weren't close mates, but we were paired together on this particular tournament. It was actually his caddy. His caddy went through my bag. So his caddy was the nemesis, and he went through my bag because he was just doing that to wind me up. And I have to say, Blakey, not to make the listeners feel sorry or sad for me, but it was probably the only time that I've ever shed a tear on a golf course. It was true. I was young. I was irreconcilable, and the lost hot dots meant nothing. But my honour was questioned that day, and I didn't enjoy it. So it just, anyway, I clearly maybe have got over it since.
Well, that's a good sort of segment. We're not going to do it today, a segue, but just we want to hear from listeners that have broken the rules on the golf course. Most likely, we're not going to hear from the ones that actually did it on purpose. The cheats out there. But what happens when you found out you've broken a rule, and what happens if how you found out? Did someone else tell you? Did you find out yourself, and how you've coughed up and had to change your score basically, or disqualify yourself? We want to hear more about that. And if you do we definitely want to go into this situation where if you do find out that someone's broken the rule, how do you broach it with them? How do you approach them? Are you their marker? Are you a bystander? Are you not their marker? Are you allowed to talk to them if you're not their marker? I've got I know a few situations where some people have had to cough up and say that they broke a rule, and in other situations where other people have had to tell them, and in some situations it can't be. It's not very nice, because if you get told you've broken a rule, as you said, Roscoe, it's your honour is on the line. You think that you've done the worst thing. You should go to jail and feel like a criminal. Is there a nice way to approach someone? Most likely not, but in the end, it's a lesson that we all learn.
Well, the topic does segue nicely into the next rules matter from the PGA on the weekend, and it was greatly commented on to his credit, and that was the situation surrounding Rory McIlroy. And, I'll leave it to you to describe, but for me, that was the measure of the man right there, the way that Rory McIlroy handled that situation. And there's probably never going to be anyone that questions him. Not that there was a reason to, but there never will be from that point forward, but the way that he handled that replacing of his ball. So take us through that scenario there, Blakey.
Yeah, well, I mean, Rory had one last year in the bunker when he just touched some sand, which he thought was a stone. And, people were thinking, he just touched it, so he didn't actually end up improving his lie. So he didn't get a penalty in that situation. But people were sort of thinking, is that from Rory? That's not a very good look. Well, with what he did over the weekend, where we talked about ball at rest move last week with John Rahm, and it was in my one of my blogs about a ball at rest moved. Well, it wasn't. It was sort of during a search, but it didn't matter because it wasn't the player that caused the ball to move. It was a media personality, announcer, someone like that, who stepped on Rory's ball. And then they've called the referee, and the referee said, well, you just have to estimate where the ball was at rest when it was stood on and place it there. And most people would put their ball back in this sort of fluffed up, nice spot, assuming that the ball had come to rest in the rough in this sort of fluffed up spot. Which, if you'd been watching the golf at Harding Park, was very unlikely. Most of them, the balls would nestle down. And so Rory didn't feel comfortable in replacing his ball in this estimated spot that sat up. So he ended up pushing the ball down a little bit into a, not as nice a lie, obviously. Ended up making a bogey there at that hole on the par 3. I think it was the third. And, it's just a nice story that, it's all about upholding the rules and the spirit of the game. If you hit it into the rough, you're not necessarily going to get a good lie. If you hit into the fairway, you're not necessarily entitled to a good lie. Most people complain about the divot, ball rolling into a divot in the fairway. They're never going to change that because, as I said it last week, and I'm going to say it every episode, golf is a challenge of your character, your personality, before it's a challenge of your skills. So you have to work out and learn how to deal with those situations.
How would that apply, the similar type of scenario to the club golfers on the weekend? So, if you have to mark your ball at the request of a playing partner, for example, if it's in the way, and how you replace that, just making sure that it does go back into exactly the same spot. There isn't there's not an opportunity to replace the ball in a better spot. You have to really pick it up, not clean it in that situation. That's correct. You can't clean the ball. If you're marking the ball at the request of your playing partner because it might be interfering with their line or something off the green, of course, can you clean the ball?
Yeah, no, you can't clean your ball if your ball is in the rough or fairway and you're simply picking it up just because it's interfering with someone else's play. And so there is no set way in how to do this. There's some recommendations. People always thought, because you see it on the professional tours, people always thought you have to use your thumb and your forefinger to put it, and then you have to hold it up in the air. And yeah, exactly. That's not the process. It's recommended to do it that way, or other people they'll mark it, pick it up, and then place it somewhere else. Get it out of their hand, because as soon as you sort of start rubbing it around your hand, or without even any intention, and as soon as you rub it around your hand or you put it in your pocket, you could be cleaning it, and you could be incurring a penalty. So it's best to just do the least or hold on to the ball the least, and put it somewhere else where it's not going to have any. You're not going to have any sort of worry, and someone won't try and pull you up. Oh, you're cleaning your ball. So you're certainly not allowed to clean it in that situation.
And place it back exactly where it was. Not near, not better, just exactly how it was, where it was, in the same conditions as it was.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that's a really good one too. So, you can't then fluff it up, as I said. If it's sitting down and, if you're searching for your ball and you kick your ball because it was under the rough, you didn't see it, there's not going to be a penalty, but you need to estimate and put your ball back exactly where it was under that rule 7.4. Now, you're not going to know exactly where it was, but if you can't see it the first time, there's a high likelihood that it was sitting down. It wasn't sitting up. So you need to estimate, and, integrity comes in here, and you're going to push the ball back down into the grass a little bit. And, with that sort of there's a sort of another interpretation in the rule that's quite interesting. If your ball has mud on it, say you marked your ball just in the fringe because it was interfering, and your ball had mud on it, obviously you're not allowed to clean it. And then you also, you couldn't then put the mud, if the mud was sort of on the top of the ball, you couldn't then put the mud on the underside so that it was teed up a little bit, or you couldn't put it to the side, or you couldn't, the mud would have to go back into the same position. And, number one, you got to try and put it back in the same position. And as long as you try your best reasonable effort, then you're going to be okay. Mm-hmm. But if you're trying any other kind of way, then, as I said, golf might not be your sort of sport. If you're trying to circumvent a couple of rules, that's just not on. That's not what golf is about.
Now, what else is not on when you're playing golf on the weekend is walking up to the ball when it's about half a foot away from the hole and then taking an air swing. That is not on, especially when you're in the PGA Tour, especially when you're playing in the first major of the year and you're Rickie Fowler. What was he thinking?
Yeah, I thought you were going to tell me, tell the listeners about my golf game on the weekend, but that happened in the PGA Championship. Rickie went a little taparoo, and I guess he just decelled at the wrong time and lifted the club at the wrong time, and he brushed it. It wasn't a perfect. The first time I saw it, I thought it was a perfect air swing, but he actually did brush the ball and probably moved it. A lot of commentary over the Instagram there for that one from you, and a lot of people were questioning that. So we'll talk about it in a sec. We'll see if we can listen to it. But people thought that it was an air swing, or did he touch it? Did he address it? All that sort of thing. But let's see if we can hear some of it.
Hello, manages to save par there, but there's a bit of.
Let's just see if we can. This is off your Instagram.
Controversy back at the 6th.
Here we go.
You remember this shortish par putt that Powell had down. He was unhappy about it. Then watch as he goes to quickly tap it in. He goes to, and the ball actually moves. It moves, so he's been docked a shot for that. And that was a double bogey in the end for Rickie Fowler back at.
Great commentary there from Australia's very own Luke Elvey, commentating the PGA from his home in Canmore, Canada. I saw some pictures of Luke doing that. But yeah, so he had a question there, walked up to it, went to flop it in, and old taparoo, double whammy.
Yeah, I had a few followers asking, well, couldn't he just say that it was accidental? There was accidental movement that he changed his mind. I mean, he could. He wouldn't, because that's not what happened. He made a stroke with the intention of hitting the ball in the hole. So, that would be the opposite of what Rory did. And Rickie wouldn't do that anyway. But if he had accidentally moved it, then that would have been worse situation, because it did actually move. and he would have had to replace it. He didn't replace it, and so it would have actually ended up causing him a 2-shot penalty instead of just 1 stroke. So that would be inadvisable to do it that way. But it was a clear stroke. You know, we all make mistakes. Unfortunately, Rickie missed the cut by 1, and that was the culprit shot, basically. So that was annoying for everyone, but a little at Rickie's expense, that was quite funny.
I dare say Rickie felt worse after doing that and missing the cut than I did after losing a dozen rockets after being found out for having 15 clubs in my bag, even though one was about a foot tall cut off down the bottom of my bag. Yeah, I fair say he would have felt a bit worse.
Yeah, no, I would have thought so, especially because it would have been replayed around social media, whereas I don't think they had social media back in junior golf days for you there, Roscoe.
No, definitely not. Didn't have whiteboard chalk. There wasn't even a leaderboard with whiteboard marker. It was chalk back in my day, mate. That's how long it goes back. Yeah, it was very unfortunate for Rickie because he is a fan favourite. He's a sponsor's favourite. You know, Rocket on the My Love of Golf podcast. I'm sure he'll have something to say about Rickie tonight and the great work that he did for his sponsors. He is always one for representing his sponsors, and in an inadvertent way, he did represent them again and got them a lot of airtime. But anyway, poor Rickie.
That is very true. Now we move on. Next one to another upstanding citizen on the PGA Tour, and Cameron Tringale. Did you see what happened there, Roscoe?
Well, I did after, what day was it? Was it day 2 or 1?
I'd say it was round 2 on that Saturday morning for us, yeah.
Well, I just scrolled through the leaderboard because I wasn't able to see the coverage. I was doing other things in the morning, and I saw him at the bottom DQ'd. And my question was, you know, how do you get DQ'd these days? You know, like obviously it was for signing an incorrect card, but I just, immediate thoughts were, how do you get DQ'd? And take us through how a professional on the PGA Tour gets DQ'd.
Well, I mean, this is more common than you think, which sucks. It shouldn't be common at all. But he has, to his credit, played on that Friday, Saturday morning for us in Australia, and he's finished, signed his scorecard, handed it in at the scoring area. There's a specific scoring area on the tour. They make sure that it's set up. It's almost guarded, like the Reserve Bank of Australia. You know, it's vaulted almost. It's looked after. There's people in there. There's security, making sure that these players don't make mistakes when signing their card, because it's a big part of the game of golf. Now he's finished there. He's gone to probably grab some lunch in the player dining. Looked up at the TV, seen that it's come up with a 68 when he actually had a 69. And he's thinking, there's something not quite right here. So he's gone back to the committee and told them, is this a scoring error on my part or a scoring error on the TV's part? And it came down to the fact that it was a scoring error on his part. He signed for an incorrect score. He signed for a 68 when he actually had a 69. I don't know the full story, but I believe it was a par 3 where it was written on his card as a 3 when he actually had a 4. He signed for it. I mean, they're playing player and marker, and usually I've been in a scoring hut before. As a scorer, you definitely don't want to have any interruptions, and you don't want to, look at these players like they're famous or anything. If Tiger Woods comes in, you don't just go, "Oh, Tiger, how you going? Can I have your autograph?" He's making an autograph, and it's to put it on his card. So this is their office. This is their job. You want to make sure that they don't stuff up their job at the end of the day. Unfortunately, mistakes can still happen, and it's the player's responsibility to get it right. Usually the players will go through and say, 4-3-5, 4-3-5, 5-3-4, and, that equals blah, blah, blah. The player doesn't actually have to get the addition correct. That's up to the scorer. They just have to get, and there's no handicap on the card for these guys. They just have to get basically their correct score for the individual hole. So the first hole, they have to have the correct score. The second hole, da-da-da. If they add it up and it comes to 105 instead of 104, the scorer is going to recheck that and say, oh, no, it actually was 104, blah, blah, blah. So it doesn't matter about the whole score. It's just their individual scores. He's obviously, unfortunately, made a mistake there. And after returning the card, there is nothing that can help him avoid that DQ penalty unless it was for a penalty that he didn't know he had incurred. So if he was found to have grounded his club in the bunker, didn't know that, signed his card, and then they found out after and they said, okay, you just get the 2 shots. So we just add 2 shots. So it was a penalty. But in this case, on that par 3, it worked out that it wasn't a penalty. It was just a miscount. And unfortunately, Cameron was disqualified, even though he was most, upholding the rules and honest in his revelations that wasn't his correct score.
Can we just back over the scoring part? Because it's something that I think gets, as a viewer sitting at home, people see the scorecard come out. You see the vision when they come into the scoring hut. They've got a little card, and then there's the small thin card at the top of that they are reference checking. What is happening? Does the player get a card and then they have to swap it? Does the caddy get a card? So there's a scorer that goes with the group. He's an official, right? An official scorer. Is that correct?
He is an official scorer, but he is only officially scoring for the TV. Right. That is not the official score of the player.
Okay. So do the players get a card each and they have to swap cards with each other? Just like you and I do.
Correct. And their cards are slightly different in that they have a perforated edge strip on the bottom so that they can keep their own scores. So it's a very, because you don't have to put in your stroke index on the hole. They don't have handicaps. I think they do put measurement, but, they're not too worried. They already know the measurement of the hole. It's on the tee board and everything like that. But they make it pretty for the players. Basically, the marker, all they care about is the marker writing the scores on the player's card and the player at the end grabbing that card and saying, this is correct, I sign it, and the marker signs it as well. Right. They rip off the perforated edge because they rip off that bit and they put it alongside their card, and they go 4-4, 3-3, 5-5, 6-6, 7-7, 3-3, 3-3, 2-2. And it's a fairly easy process, and you shouldn't really feel rushed to get that scorecard done. A lot of people on the Friday night, they'll sort of throw the card in and aren't really too worried if it's kind of right or not, because if they shot 80, they're probably going to miss the cut anyway. So it's not going to matter too much for them. But the ones that are on the cut line, the ones that are in the cut, within the cut line, leading the tournament, they definitely want to make sure that their cards are correct.
Right, got it. Clear on that now. Now, mate, is there any other things emanating from the weekend's tournament that you want to cover off?
There was one little thing.
Mm-hmm.
It was from Rockets man Brooks, who didn't quite get it done on Sunday, and luckily Rocket has a backup, and I'd have to say that he's probably one of my favourite players now, Colin. But Brooks had a medical timeout on, was it first round or second round? And so basically he had the physio come out. This is very similar. You probably see it more in tennis than you see it in golf. But he had the physio come out and work on his hip. And I just had some questions about whether that was legal to do. In the tour, it's usually that they have per round maximum of 15 minutes for a medical timeout. So that's 15 minutes accumulative over that whole round. So they might have someone work on their hip for 5 minutes per each 6 holes, or a minute each 15 holes, if you could do that. So that's a tour regulation, a terms of the competition regulation that they have in there at the tour. And I think from memory, it's total of 15 minutes.
So it is okay for someone to come out onto the course and give a player treatment should they need it. They don't have to declare it beforehand. They don't have to say, my back's a bit crooked today, I might need a medical timeout. My physio's over here, she's going to run out. They can just say, right, that's it, I'm cooked, get someone out here, and they've got 15 minutes.
Yeah, so that's a really good summary and a good point you make there too. A lot of the time they will tell one of the tour staff that they have some issues, because it's in all likelihood that they have to go through the tour, and the physio knows that, the doctor knows that, and a lot of the time the physio or the doctor might not have their own golf cart, and it will be the tour staff that actually have to run them out to that player.
Right.
So they tell the walking referee or walking scorer, who tells the referee or roving referee, and then the roving referee will get someone to get the physio or doctor to come to their help. And then, they'll have a stopwatch on them, just saying, keeping an eye on the time that they have. Because, you might think, oh, well, that's pretty, who cares about if they go 1 minute over or 2 minutes under, 2 minutes over or whatever. Well, considering the feedback I got, or the questions I got from Instagram, it's the same questions that they're getting from other players. And this is basically why we have rules. It's so that everyone knows the policy before they start playing, and so that they know where they stand if that kind of situation ever happens. So if Brooks gets 15, Tiger gets 15, Bryson gets 15, it's all fair, and no one's getting any more than they require.
Yep. Perfect, mate. Perfect. Well, once again, a 5-minute chat's turned into about 50 minutes of golf rules, questions, and discussion, which is good. There is a lot more to come in this podcast series. We're going to uncork, unravel, and explain all of your questions that you have related to the golf rules in the future podcast. That's correct, isn't it?
That is absolutely correct. And as I said, I think the next one we may talk about, just upholding the rules and how to approach people that have breached the rules, or how to declare your own uncertainty around the rules. If
you've got this far and listened this long, thank you very much once again. If you have had a situation like that, we'd love to hear it. We'd love to hear from you. You can contact us any way you choose. Instagram, you can email, YouTube, whatever way you want to get in contact, please do, anonymously or not. We are happy to hear from you, and we would love you to contribute towards that. And Blakey, I'm looking forward to catching up again. I notice that because we're doing this via Zoom, and you saw the video, hopefully you saw some of the video that of my smiling dial. That's it right there. And Blakey over there with sitting in front of a majestic looking backdrop. And I've changed my backdrop this week, and I was just sitting here thinking of my former travels in times when we could travel, about my backdrop and where it was, and taking that photo. I'm going to throw a little bit of a challenge. I don't know if this will work or not, Blakey, but I'm going to ask the listeners to give me the best shot at picking where that photo is actually taken from. And if you want, if you've travelled the nomadic destinations of the world that you have, Blakey. I'm happy for the listeners to tell me where your backdrop is too, mate.
I reckon my one is actually easier to pick than your one.
Well, mine is in a golf clubhouse of the world, and a fairly significant one at that. It's a course that I haven't played, but I have been to. But it was just a nice picture. I was doing some ISO hard drive cleaning up, and I found that picture. And I thought, well, there's a nice backdrop. That looks like it sort of looks like my hallway just here in the house here. Not really. But anyway, there's a little bit of a challenge to end the podcast on a lighter note. Blakey, been good.
This has been fantastic for episode 2. We're off hot and running. So, looking forward to more.
We certainly are. I've done more podcasts in the last week than most podcasters have done in a year, and it's good. I love it. I love the chat to talk. Yes, that too. I love the chance to talk and learn, and that's what I'm doing from you, young man. So I appreciate your time once again.
Excellent. Well, as you see with me in the book, I'm still learning as well. So it's all good.
Well, everyone's welcome to learn with us. Join the journey, the Golf Rules Questions podcast, episode 2. That's it. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.